Welcome to Catholic Champion. Today we have some hot topics on the docket. Today we are talking about, is Gaza really being starved or not? There's a lot of discrepancy out there, people saying different stuff. We have a special guest along with, of course, my co-host Michael Hichborn, myself, John Yep, and a new friend, Jason Jones from the Vulnerable People Project. You are going to want to stay tuned. Jason, what's up, man? Jason Jones, Vulnerable People Project. This guy is, if you text him, you never know where in the world he's going to be. I think when I first brought this up to you, you were just getting back from Taiwan. I think you can say that on there. I hope that's okay. But you are around the world. You are helping the vulnerable people, and we appreciate that. This country appreciates that, and you're bringing truth to a lot of situations that are covered up in the media. How's that for a quick bio, besides the fact you're from Chicago and we're from the same city?
Yeah, well, first of all, you're two good old friends, and I just landed from Taiwan, so 24-hour travel time, and I've had 16 cups of coffee in the past 24 hours, so I hope I'm present and not too jittery. And not only am I from Chicago, the home of Pope Leo, his favorite pizza place, Aurelio's Pizza, that was my first job. So,
no kidding. That's it. I know exactly where that is. Absolutely. South side,
are you
right?
a Cubs fan or a Sox fan?
I'm a Sox fan.
All right, good. Then we're friends still. Like the Pope.
That's it. We're in step with the Pope. So, Jason, man, you're an expert on this topic right now, which is just the whole nation's been talking about this. So, Israel, the war, Gaza, and there's a lot of different conflicting reports going on right now. And we thought we'd just start off this segment going to, what one of the leaders of the conservative movement here in the country, Charlie Kirk, what he's done with Turning Point, especially in this last election. Chasing down ballots was so crucial for our victory last November. And he had this clip about what's going on in Gaza. Are they being starved or not? And if they are, who's behind it? So let's go right to it and listen to what Charlie had to say with his guest, the rabbi.
Being lied to. And I hate being propagandized. And this weekend, there was an all-out propaganda campaign trying to make it seem as if Israel is intentionally starving the people of Gaza. I hate being lied to, especially by the media networks. They lied to us about COVID. They lied to us about the vaccines. They lied to us about open borders. They lied to us Hunter Biden laptop. Joining us now is Rabbi Walicki, a great friend, and thank you so much for defending me the other day. Rabbi Walicki, you're also the YouTube, people can find you on YouTube, Israel 365. Rabbi, let's just go through the facts here, and then let's get into the lies. What is the situation in Gaza as the truth would bear it out, not the New York Times propagandist network?
Well, if we're talking about the starvation lie, and thank you, Charlie, thank you for having me on to talk about this. It's so important because this is really pure propaganda, as you say. So since the beginning of the war, since October 7th, the whole issue of the food getting into Gaza and how much food is getting in has been weaponized by Hamas and by the whole pro-Hamas crowd. And what they're doing most recently is claiming that there's a starvation crisis. The quantities of food, I'm not going to get into the weeds of the numbers, but the quantities of food that have been brought into the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war and month over month is enough to feed the Gaza Strip, according to the World Food Program's numbers for what it takes to feed people, for longer than this war has gone on, for about 27 months worth of food. And there's plenty of food getting into the Gaza Strip. But what's happening is that Hamas is trying to perpetuate this narrative that Gazans are starving because starting about 2 months ago, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is run by Americans and is in cooperation with the Israelis, has started distributing food, started distributing humanitarian aid directly to the people of Gaza. And why is that important? Because until they started doing that, the only way for Gazans to get food was to get it from Hamas. All of the tons and tons of food, all the truckloads of food that have been coming into the Gaza Strip as humanitarian aid since the beginning of the war until 2 months ago, were brought in by United Nations organizations that were working hand in glove with Hamas. It was going directly to Hamas, and then Hamas would sell it at exorbitant prices to the people, hoard it for themselves, take all the fuel to fuel their war machine, use it to recruit new recruits into Hamas, and it was basically Hamas's oxygen. The estimates now by the United States, by the State Department, is that Hamas has made approximately $500 million just from selling aid to the people of the Gaza Strip since the war has begun.
Let's pause it right there.
So
and have
Israel
Jason
has
just
realized for a
comment
long time.
right now on that. Jason, okay, great. So his whole theory that essentially you have the money or the food's going to Hamas. Hamas controls it. They're using black market, and they're making $600 million and using it. Fact or fiction? What do you have to say to that?
Lies.
Yeah.
Oh, and not only are they lies, Charlie says he doesn't want to be propagandized. Charlie's afraid. He's scared to tell the truth. Charlie Kirk knows the truth. Okay? Let's be clear. Everyone I know in the conservative movement, many who now are telling the truth, have been communicating with me since the beginning. And the first thing I did on October 7th, the day of the October 7th attack, was approve the Vulnerable People Project, our organization's putting armed guard in front of synagogues in Africa that were in vulnerable places. First thing I did. On October 19th, the month the war started, Israel dropped a bomb on the oldest continuous use church in the world, where the Christians there descend from the families that walked with Jesus Christ and were in the upper room. And that became very clear to me then that they were waging an indiscriminate war, and I began to speak up. So from the very beginning, conservatives shared with me. They would message me, text me, "Thank you, brother. You're so courageous. You're so brave. I wish I had your courage." And slowly but surely, in the months and years as this war has unfolded, more and more people are speaking up. They just couldn't be quiet anymore. And I can see when Charlie talks on this, there's a clip where he's on a university and a Palestinian student asks him a question. And Charlie says, "You're a Palestinian Christian?" And he says, "Yes." And he goes, "Oh, great." And you could see Charlie just was frustrated that he was having to deal with this issue. And I think this is the last thing that Charlie Kirk wants to talk about. I really admire Charlie Kirk. He's a great young man. He's been a great patriot. He's built an amazing organization, and his organization is being destroyed in Gaza, just as the evangelical church in America will die in Gaza because the young in this country have watched a genocide live streamed on TikTok. And all of these young evangelical Christian kids that have parents that are Christian Zionists supporting this war, their children are going to either become Orthodox, Catholic, or lose their faith in Jesus Christ. So I really pity Charlie Kirk. But these are all lies. The great Jewish political philosopher and survivor of the Holocaust, barely escaped Germany as a young woman, Hannah Arendt, talked about the banality of evil, that most people who are evil or advocate evil are not monsters, they're thoughtless. The idea that Hamas is stealing food from 2 million people while waging a war against one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world. At my Substack, at the Jason Jones Show, my Substack, just yesterday, I did an analysis of what it would take a month to steal just 25% of the food that it would take to provide 1,000 calories a day for Palestinians, which would still keep them struggling in hunger, not starvation, but hunger. It would take 189 trucks a month that you would have to steal, that you would have to move, and that you would have to hide. And then you would have to guard the food. And it would take thousands of men working 50 hours a week simply to run these very sophisticated operations that would leave massive amounts of evidence with the drones and the satellites and all the technology that we have. But even the Israeli military and the Israeli government has admitted that there's no credible evidence of large-scale theft. Now, of course, Hamas is stealing food. Of course, gangs and hoodlums and thugs and criminals and grifters and war profiteers are stealing. You know, at the Vulnerable People Project, we work at war zones all over the world. In Ukraine, I had more of our aid stolen than anywhere in the world. I've had zero of our aid to Gaza stolen. And now this is Catholics for Catholics. Who are you going to believe? Who are we listening to? When Charlie Kirk and Rabbi Walensky say these are lies, they're calling Pope Leo a liar. They're calling Pizzaballa a liar. They're calling the priests from Gaza liars, the Catholics from Gaza liars. They're calling every human rights organization in the world liars. The World Food Program are liars. Journalists liars. Dave Smith, the great Jewish comedian, liar. Everyone's lying. But they have no evidence. Gaza's starving. Gaza's starving. That's the truth.
Can I jump in real quick? There are several things that jumped out to me about the conversation that Charlie Kirk had. First of all, he wasn't talking to somebody with on-the-ground experience or any kind of on-the-ground visual confirmation of what was taking place in Gaza. He was speaking to a Jewish rabbi who was simply reporting what he had read in other reports. So in other words, this is all third-hand information. And for as much as he wants to say that he doesn't want to be propagandized, if he wants to know the truth, he needs to go directly to the sources. Now, this is where you are critical in this particular discussion, because what we have from your organization, which has been on the ground observing things taking place, you can say, absolutely, this is what's happening. We have seen it. We have people who have witnessed it. We've had reports coming from our own organization and from people that we serve in Gaza reporting this back to us. The second thing that stood out to me was this figure that the rabbi threw out, $500 million that Hamas had allegedly pulled by stealing and then reselling the food back to the people in Gaza. My question is, can you squeeze blood out of a turnip, or can you squeeze water out of a stone? These people are extremely poor. How are they going to make a $500 million selling food to people that have basically nothing?
Great point. Let me share this. Like, up until 3 weeks ago, we were providing hot meals every Sunday. It was a special thing that we would like to do. You know, at the Vulnerable People Project, it's important to us to keep up the morale of a people. Morale helps people live. And so we really like to honor the Christians in Gaza by giving them hot food. And they really said that they wanted vegetables. Well, to put it in perspective, onions in Gaza right now are more expensive per ounce than gold. That is true. This is true. So we wanted to give the Christians in Gaza onions with their food. You know how much it cost us to provide hot meals for every Christian in Gaza with onions? It cost us $40,000 a week.
Wow.
Okay, it's very expensive. It cost us $20,000 a month to provide the water for all the Christians in Gaza. By the way, right now, and you can go to our website at vulnerablepeopleproject.com and see it, IDF snipers shot holes at Holy Family Catholic Church's water tanks, and they leaked. So we were providing.
Was that after the attack, by the way?
That was simultaneous with the attack. No, so they could have been from shrapnel from the attack, which was what I initially thought. But reports from Christians inside said they had snipers and helicopters shooting at the water towers. So now VPP is preparing to replace those water towers with concrete. We're also going to put primer on them and let the kids paint messages to the world on these new water towers. But right now, it's going to be $120,000 to replace these water towers. And it's a red zone. Yesterday and today, they've been shelled all day, all around the church. Hamas is nowhere near that church. Now, you can believe the IDF, or you can listen to the Christians there. They know the neighborhood. They know their neighbors. And they say, Hamas is nowhere around here. They're just torturing us. Yesterday, and people are telling me, where do you get your information, Jason? You've been propagandized by Hamas. When literally I'm in daily, direct, and constant communication. I just got off the phone today, right before here, coming on the show with Christians at Holy Family Church and settlers in the West Bank. Today, in the West Bank, gangs of radical Israeli Jewish settlers are beating Christians today in the West Bank. I had a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, I talked to this morning, who's a settler, Jewish, a settler. I love this man. And he was excusing it. And I said, brother, I will fight for you, but you need to fight for me too. You need to advocate for Christians. I am very much concerned about the rise of Jew hatred and anti-Semitism. I don't think there should be collective punishment to Palestinians because what Hamas does. And I would hate people to hate the Jewish people for what the state of Israel does. And I said, but we need you to speak up for us. And no one is. And this is why I love Catholics for Catholics. If we cannot advocate for the descendants of the families that were in the upper room, we cannot defend those families that were fishing next to St. Peter and Andrew. Who in the world are we going to defend? We were, by the way, silent when ISIS raped its way across Iraq, slaughtering the first century Christian communities founded by St. Thomas. Today in India, the Hindu Vata, the radical Hindu nationalists, often aligned with Israel, by the way, are killing Christians. In Azerbaijan, partnering with Israel, by the way, the Azerbaijanis ethnically cleansed last year 120,000 Armenian Apostolic Orthodox Christians from their homeland, and we were silent. So this is where we are.
Devil's advocate here. So Michael was saying, okay, there's no on-the-ground witness. He's talking to the rabbi. However, go to the end of that clip, and maybe Jason have some perspective on this. It's around minute 8. We can watch that really fast, where he has the guy on the ground showing those cases of food that are just sitting there and no one's touching them. So we're watching this.
Now. Let's show it. I got video of me on the ground with.
Let's pull that up. We're on minute 8.
Islamic aims. But secondly, if they can starve their people, then they can get a media. Play cut 312.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen what 600 trucks worth of aid looks like, but this is what it looks like. That is a lot.
You guys stop this. Stop this.
Wow.
Let him play it out, man.
It's all going to waste because the UN refuses to distribute it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Look at this. Look at all that. Literally mountains of aid. Literally, look. Standing on it. Standing on mountains of aid.
Jason, talk. What do you say to that?
Again, the banality of evil. Do they think we're stupid? Now, if you watch this and this has convinced you, I want you to really assess how easily propagandized you are. This is very important. We really you have to assess. I've got videos of me doing the same thing in Jordan, in my warehouse, where I have warehouses filled with food that the Vulnerable People Project has purchased. It's not getting into Gaza because I don't want it there. He could have gone to my warehouse and gone where I went and stood and said, "Where's VPP? Look at all this food." I will screenshot you privately and show you my WhatsApp messages begging to let us into Gaza. They won't. Now, it is true that the UN and some other organizations do have aid they won't bring into Gaza for very good reason. They want their security guaranteed. They're getting killed. My logistics partner lost over 50 employees. So these larger NGOs are demanding protection.
By the way, from Hamas, obviously, or from
no, not obviously. They're being killed by Israel.
IDF is shooting your aid workers. Your coworker lost 50 of his employees.
Yes.
That's crazy.
No, not only that, a VPP partner, I'll have him on your show. He's in Washington, D.C. right now, lost his mother and his father to the IDF. And his father and his sister, 18-year-old sister, killed by the IDF. And his mother and aunts and other sister wounded by the IDF. World Food Kitchen employees were murdered by the IDF. Holy Family Church had a 2,000-pound bomb dropped on it by the IDF. In December of 2023, 2 Catholic women walking out of church were shot in the head by the IDF. These are documented. They have not been denied. No explanations were ever provided. Yesterday, bombs were falling meters away from Holy Family Church. Shrapnel damaging the property, dust and metal getting in the eyes of the people in the house, in the church compound. This is what's happening. And we need to finally, as Catholics, open our voice for our co-religionists. And there's this narrative that Israel is the only country in the world that is expected to live up to these unrealistic rules. No, that's not true. We don't actually hold anyone accountable. I mean, in Sudan, in the Nuba, and maybe Mr. Hichborn, you can talk about what we did together in Sudan. Everywhere we work, no one's talking. I mean, I hate to get sanctimonious here, but we were in Iraq and ISIS was slaughtering its way across the church there. Not much was being said. We have 15 Catholic bishops that were disappeared by the CCP. Not much said. Jimmy Lai molting and rotting in the prison, not being much said. In Syria, they were cheering for the toppling of Assad, and they were cheering the rise of Jelani, Al-Qaeda/ISIS Jelani. Now Christians and Druze are being butchered, and not much is being said. And Our co-religionists have been systematically starved. Now, I want to make a broader point, because when I'm on evangelical media, Christian Zionist media, I will focus on the Christians because I know I'm speaking to people addled with prejudice and bigotry, but we are Catholics. I will often get asked, is the food and water you're sending to Gaza, I hope, only going to Christians? No, it's not only going to Christians. And you know why it's not only going to Christians? Because of those darn Catholics. You know, Holy Family Church, we started providing their water, and they set up water stations for the widows and orphans that are not Christian in their community. They set up food stations. When we first made contact with Holy Family Catholic Church, we were delivering the first truckloads of food to them. They said, can you do us a favor? We have 780 calories a day. They broke it down, which is, by the way, is still starvation level.
Yeah.
Will you deliver food to the Orthodox Church? They're at about 680 calories a day.
That's insane.
Right? We provide the water at Holy Family Catholic Church. They said, you don't mind, do you, that we use the excess water to create a water stations for our friends and neighbors outside of the church compound? Of course not. In fact, if we can provide more water for you, we will. Just ask, and we'll go to our donors and we'll do as much as we can do. You know, people say, oh, are they only Christians? Look, and I've been back and forth to the region all the time. You know, I've been back and forth since January twice. When I see a child with no arms and no legs, I don't go up to the child and say, have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? No. Oh, good. I was almost sad, you know, but now I don't have to be sad. No, of course. You don't do acts of collective punishment. Then you'll hear this other cliche. Well, they voted for Hamas. No, in fact, they did not vote for Hamas.
Right.
Only 6% of people living in Gaza voted for Hamas. 50% of people living in Gaza were not voted when the last election was held. And the truth is, as we now know, thanks to President Trump and Doge and Revelations, Israel and the United States funded Hamas. Netanyahu openly advocated for Hamas because they didn't want a unified Palestinian Authority. They wanted to divide and conquer so they wouldn't have to have two states, so they could do what their goal is, ethnic cleansing. That is the goal.
So that's their goal. Like, legit, you really believe that the 1948 state of Israel under Netanyahu, his government, is desired to ethnically cleanse and get them all out, 2 million of them, correct?
Yeah, 2 million. And then the next line is, the next cliche they'll say, well, why don't we just, these Arab states don't want them. You know, a lot of the same lines are used against the Palestinians that are used against Jews. You'll hear anti-Semites say the Jews were kicked out of 111 countries. If you're kicked out of 111 bars, maybe it's not the bars, it's you. It's a line you'll hear anti-Semites say. Then you'll hear anti-Arab bigots, anti-Palestinian bigots say, how come their neighbors don't want them if they're so great? Well, hey, I'm a Catholic. We're Catholics. We want a secure border. We don't want 2 million Mexican Catholics just getting up and walking into our country. Number one, countries have borders. Countries have economies. They have interests. But number two, Israel's rule is once a Palestinian leaves, they're never, ever, ever allowed back. So these states don't want to foment ethnic cleansing. In fact, even when I was initially evacuating wounded Palestinian Christian women and pregnant women and children that were wounded, I was receiving Palestinians and others that were upset with me saying, you know, you're just aiding and abetting the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. You know, and that was a tragedy. That's a decision we had to make. If we had people that would die, we evacuated them to hospitals in Egypt to care for them. But the reality is, under the present circumstances, they will never, ever be allowed back. And there's families have lived there since before the time of Jesus Christ. Why in the world should we just take for granted that 2 million people should be ethnically cleansed because of Benjamin Netanyahu's Lebensborn program? It is the Lebensborn program of Netanyahu. But we as Catholics must be vigilant and say, under no circumstances will you ethnically cleanse our people. And the fact is, right now in the West Bank, there is a war on Christians. In the West Bank, what does the West Bank have to do with Hamas? It's under the Palestinian Authority. What is going on there? And they're being brutalized. Right now, today, Catholics are praying the rosary, begging for mercy, begging for help. They're being beaten. And what do they get from American Christians, even many Catholics that consume Protestant media? They're getting, well, hey, my friend who's a settler today said to me, we're not stealing from them. They were just renting. And now we said, we're not going to renew your lease. You have to leave.
Yeah.
That's what he said today.
I want to go back to just a point of propaganda real quick, because it really does kind of touch on the heart of what we're talking about. Back with what Charlie Kirk was saying, he didn't want to be propagandized. He hates lies, et cetera, et cetera. And then he had, of course, his guest who said that that Hamas made $500 million by stealing and reselling food. But then he closed with that clip of a guy sitting on top of all of that food that wasn't going anywhere. No one was getting that food. So that is a lot of food, all those trucks worth of food, not being sold, which begs the question, well, where's that money coming from? So there's a lot of misinformation and I think deliberate disinformation when it comes to analyzing the information that we have available to us as we look at the situation at hand. And again, going to what your people have experienced, the fact that they have seen firsthand, IDF shooting people, shooting Christians, shooting at the Catholic Church, shooting at the wells, and you have that situation where real people are reporting real events. Those things are glossed over, while at the same time, we're getting strange mixed signals coming from Charlie Kirk and others.
Yeah, I pity Charlie. My heart breaks for him, actually. I would not want to be in his shoes. He must be addled and tormented and tortured because he's lying and he knows he's lying. Charlie's been there. I know people who know Charlie and communicate directly with Charlie. He knows the truth. And there will come a day where he makes a statement and retracts it and recants and says he didn't know. We're even seeing that now from the Israeli press and the mainstream media. By the way, everyone in the world now admits there's an ethnic cleansing. Everyone in the world now admits there's a famine, unless literally you're lying on behalf of the state of Israel. I mean, even the AIPAC now has disassociated with Congressman Fine. An American congressman called for the starvation of Gaza, said he loved dead Palestinian babies, and we should nuke Gaza. By the way, on October 9th, 2023, I can read it for you. The state of Israel made a statement saying we are blockading Gaza, no water, no food, no fuel. You can't say you're going to do something, do it, and say you've never done it.
Right.
Explain okay, Jason, but what about this? Explain the strange bedfellows that we have. This is why it's so perplexing, because obviously no one in their right mind is ever going to believe the New York Times or liberal New York Post or whatever, right? So they're all spitting out that it is a genocide happening. Okay, they're saying that. You have someone like Charlie Kirk, who was incredible for this past election, done so much work for the conservative movement. He's saying the opposite. And then you throw in the Holy Father on top of that. And you have all of our church leaders who are actually on the side of the left-wing media. So you have these strange bedfellows. What's up with that?
I've been here before. I had a call yesterday from a New York Times reporter, told me how brave I was. I said, no, I was brave the first time I did this. This time I'm not brave because I knew how it was going to play out the day it started playing out. I knew I had nothing to worry about. I opposed the invasion of Iraq in 2003. In fact, my organization was founded in 2002 because I wanted to mobilize the pro-life movement to oppose the invasion of Iraq. We utterly failed. And why did I want to do that? Well, Pope John Paul the Great, St. John Paul, said that if we shatter the secular equilibrium in the Middle East, it will lead to the ethnic cleansing of Christians and other religious minorities in the region. Bingo. That's exactly what happened, by the way. And I was going to protests and marches in Washington, D.C. with lefties, with strange-os, and it was the Pope and it was the left. But it was really the
But why, though? Why the left? Why are they actually on this side? Don't they want to destroy Christians? Isn't that a good thing for them?
I mean, they're not a monolith, right? I think there's a lot of good people that are wrapped up in bad ideology. For my friend, the settler, I love this guy. And he's sitting there saying to me that we want to steal the land of the Palestinians, and it's just no one should be upset by it. So, by the way, look, we'll take our allies where we get them. I think there's a lot of people that are just, remember, the left actually supported the invasion of Iraq. Hillary, John Kerry, everyone, the New York Times, the mainstream media, and they all supported this war. But what did the mainstream left do as soon as we invaded Iraq? As soon as they got us to invade, they switched sides, right, and pretended to oppose it. We're seeing the same thing again. this was Joe Biden's war, and the mainstream media was all behind this war. And who opposed this war? Why did I support Donald Trump? Why did I go to Pennsylvania and campaign to the 200,000 Arab Christians in Pennsylvania and tell them to support Trump? And I went and spoke at mosques. Why? Because Trump said he would end this war on day one. It was Joe Biden's war. It was the establishment's war. Trump was going to end it. Just like the war in Ukraine was the establishment's war, and Trump was going to end it. But we always see the same game. It's just a game. And there are those that I say they're outside of the matrix that can think for themselves, that despise violence. And it's just a human thing. You really have to be addled with some kind of vicious and cruel ideology to see children starving and shrug. You can't have it both ways. You can't go have guys like Congressman Fine say nuke Gaza, starve Gaza. You can't have the state of Israel announce that they're going to starve Gaza and then say we've never starved Gaza. It was never our intent to starve Gaza. They say you can't prove it's a genocide because genocide, you need intent. We have video of leaking water towers. And then you'll have Christians that will say things to me like maybe Hamas bombed the church and did it to make it look like Israel did it. Yes, that's right. The Hamas flew a jet over Gaza and dropped a 2,000-pound bomb on our church. Okay.
It boggles my mind, too, that we are so trustworthy of things coming out of the Netanyahu government. This is the same government that what was just about 3-4 weeks ago that they rushed into Iran. They bombed Iran because they said we were, quote, days away from having a nuclear weapon. Okay. That was on that Thursday night. Netanyahu goes on Sunday night on Brett Baer and says, oh, by the way, it's not just days, it's actually months. And also we're about regime change. Okay. So they completely got us into that whole mess, right? They probably messed up Trump's whole negotiation and forced Trump's hand to rush in there with the B-2 bombers because actually they didn't have the materials to finish the job. They, in fact, needed our U.S. bombers to do so. So we're supposed to trust these people that have the technology to bomb at 6-story apartment buildings and yet somehow messed up and shot the local church in Gaza? I don't think so. Would you agree, Jason?
Yeah, no. And to the evangelical Christians listening, you think that we have an ignorant you find papal infallibility strange. I find the state of Israel infallibility strange. I mean, I've never seen a Catholic trust the proclamations of a pope the way an evangelical Christian will swallow anything that they are merely told is somehow in the interest of the state of Israel. And in fact, I would say that they're undermining the interests of the state of Israel because Netanyahu has damaged Israel's standing in the world. They've dropped the equivalent of 10 Hiroshima bombs on this little strip of land that is densely populated. And then the CIA says that Hamas is now larger than it was before the war started. Well, how could that be possible?
So what are they supposed to do, though? Devil's advocate. How do you get rid of Hamas? How are you supposed to end this?
The United States and Israel shouldn't have funded Hamas. How about that? How about we shouldn't have meddled in their election and allowed them to vote for who they wanted to vote for and have a unified government and have an independent state? Maybe why don't they just come out and say, no, they don't want a 2-state solution. They want to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians.
Let's just remember that Hamas
is, they want to remove our Christians. We even Mike Huckabee came out and condemned Israel for the abuse of Christians. But by the way, what abuse of Christians did Mike Huckabee find? Finally, Mike Huckabee, who's been a real disappointment. I know him well, personally. I know him. He's been on my podcast. I know his family. I know him. Very big disappointment. Is it the starving of the Christians in Gaza, the blowing up of Christian homes in the West Bank? No, it was telling evangelical Christian groups that they couldn't bring their tour buses into Bethlehem anymore. Why? Well, because what was happening? Even evangelical Christians, if they get off the beaten path, if they scoot away from their tour guide in a little propaganda trip for more than half a block, they come back to the United States radicalized. And so Israel realized that we can't have people coming here because they come here and they go back home supporting the Palestinian cause. But what finally caught Huckabee's attention was, Huckabee, he's made a lot of money bringing tour buses to the West Bank, I can tell you what. And he probably has partners that were leaning on him, say, hey, tell Israel to let us keep bringing our tour buses in. That's very sad to me. My organization, the Vulnerable People Project, I founded it as a Catholic apostolate to stand with those communities that the world wouldn't stand with. I got the idea as a young pro-life activist in college when I realized that the large human rights organizations really served power, and they lacked the courage to stand with communities that didn't come with prestige or donors. And I thought, those of us who are pro-life activists, we stand with the community that has no prestige, no money, and no power, the child in the womb. In fact, half of the children we saved never know we were involved in saving them. And many of them grew up to hold the opposite position of us. And so we care for life. It's not based on utility, but based on respect for human dignity. So I thought the pro-life movement, I would like to elevate the pro-life movement to stand with the vulnerable facing ethnic cleansing, genocide, and war the way we stand for the child in the womb. That's where I got the idea for VPP. And the Bible verse that really inspired me was Ecclesiastes 4:1. King Solomon said, I looked all over the world and all I see is oppression. And on the side of the oppressor is power. And on the side of the vulnerable is no one. And I thought, I want to stand with those that no one will stand with, but the oddballs, but that when Solomon said that, it was true. But now we can say, I looked all over the world and all I see is oppression. On the side of the oppressor is power. And on the side of the oppressed is the mystical body of Christ. And as a Christian, I am called to stand with those that no one will stand with. I will kneel down next to the woman caught in the act of adultery as she's about to be stoned. We will kiss lepers. We will advocate for Palestinians, the Nuba, the Uyghur, the Yazidi. This is the mission of VPP. This is how we live out what it is to be a Catholic. This is the apostolate of the Catholic in the world, to show that the Dalit in India, that the Hindu Vata want to kill and they call them untouchable, is made in the image and likeness of God. The Yazidi, that are treated as less than animals in the Middle East, have an incomparable dignity, beauty, and worth. That the Palestinian, which all of us have been propagandized to hate since the day we came to this planet, are beautiful creatures made in the image and likeness of God. And it is true that the Palestinian people descend directly from the people that were there at the time of Christ. Yes, there have been many invasions. Yes, there's been all kinds of mixing going on. But the reality is that they all descend from the community that was there when our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, entered the world. And we know through our gospel that there is now no longer Jew or Gentile, and that through the mystical body of Christ, we are one. We are Israel. We are the body of Christ. And this is our apostolate. So to turn our back on the Palestinian Christians is to turn your back on Jesus Christ himself. And I can tell you what, at the Vulnerable People Project, we will never, ever back down from
Jason,
standing.
that's what gives you credibility, man, is that you really are an advocate around the world for whoever it is, whatever religion. And that's why, honestly, that earns a platform in so many ways for you to say what you're saying, which is not popular. A lot of circles in the political, world that you and I are both part of. And we're grateful you're doing that. Michael, you have any final comments or questions for Jason before we let him go?
No, I just want to add to what Jason's project, Vulnerable People's Project, is doing is completely and totally in line with everything that the church teaches. It is serving the poor with charity in love. And it's not discriminatory in the sense of who they serve. It's how they serve. And it's absolutely everything that the church ought to be doing instead of playing politics in many ways, especially with aid funds. And I would also like to point out, Jason is not funded by the federal government the way many international aid and development organizations are. And he's not implementing any government programs or UN programs. It's just him and a group of very dedicated, well-organized, and just marvelous human beings who are doing the Lord's work. I highly commend everything that you're doing, Jason. I hope that you continue, and I hope that people support you as much as possible.
Well, Michael, can I thank you personally? Actually, today, the team captain of something we worked on together, his wife gave birth. And
Marvelous.
yeah, you reached out to me a year and a half ago, and a religious order was trapped in the middle of a war between two violent factions in Khartoum, Sudan. And thanks to you reaching out to us, our organization was to mobilize and evacuate and rescue an order of nuns. It was a very intense. Not only that, but we were able to additionally get out the nuns and 800 other Christians.
Yep.
And former Green Berets and Navy SEALs, these military contractors that folks had reached out to couldn't reach them. But the Vulnerable People Project was able to do that. And how we were able to do that and how we do all of our work, well, most of our work, wherever there is the church, is we work with and through the local church. Yep. And, you know, pray for the church in Nigeria. We lost one of our security team members in Nigeria 2 weeks ago, was shot and killed defending a church from an attack from extremists. It's not easy work. But yet what we're called to do, we're simply doing what we're called to do is love our neighbor and to love our creator. And I can't thank you enough. This is a very important week. We have a campaign at the Vulnerable People Project. We launched it. And if you go to vulnerablepeopleproject.com or you go to my Substack, The Jason Jones Show, we are calling on President Trump to call Benjamin Netanyahu and stop this genocide. Ronald Reagan in 1982 called Menachem Begin and said, stop the Holocaust in Lebanon. Stop the Holocaust in Lebanon or we will cease supporting Israel. And what happened? The war stopped. Does President Trump have the courage to stand up to powerful interests and say, call Benjamin Netanyahu and say, stop the Holocaust? I'm going to use Ronald Reagan's word. By the way, what was happening in Lebanon was so small compared to the tragedy that's happening in Gaza. Donald Trump can stop this war. And the only community that really has the might to force his hand on this is the Catholic vote. And this is why Catholics for Catholics is so important. Really? And to you ambitious politicians that are watching this show, nobody will win a national election again that is an extremist on violence in the Middle East. Why is that? Michigan and Pennsylvania, you will never get past Michigan. There are 200,000 Middle Eastern Christians that live in Pennsylvania. I believe that Trump won because of Gaza. He won Michigan and Pennsylvania, two states that nobody expected him to win. And so we have a real opportunity right now as Catholics. There's no other show on earth I would rather be on than this show, because those of you who are watching this show, we can really move the president to give him the strength to do what I know he wants to do. Because the one thing I most respect about Donald Trump is that he hates war. He has a natural human revulsion. He's not a Lindsey Graham or a Tom Cotton, some radical ideologue that talks about war like it's a game. And can I promote my new book?
Do it, bro. Let's go.
So my new book just came out this week. Dispatches from the Great Campaign. It's 30 years of my work traveling around the world, fighting for the child in the womb, Sudan, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Iraq. So Dispatches from the Great Campaign. St. John Paul the Great called us to launch a great campaign in defense of human life. And that's what we're trying to do at the Vulnerable People Project.
That's awesome, Jason. We are super grateful, man, for coming on, and love to have you back on the show again. Two Chicago boys getting it done, right? Along with Pope Leo, that's the way to do it. So thank you for standing up, and let's keep hitting on this issue. And we'll see you soon again.
Amen.
All right. God bless you guys.
Yep. Heck of a segment, Michael, and I just want to finish off that piece just again, really thanking also Charlie, because he's in a tough position as leader of an organization, which is, amassed thousands of followers. Sure. It is not easy. And to his credit, I really admire the fact that he got those young people together. Those are people that are basically his chapter heads, almost like his team, right? And right there on camera. And they had that conversation, and he let them speak for themselves. That takes guts. He also did not back down from pressure when he had Tucker Carlson speak at that convention. And boy, did he get it. He definitely got it. And we love what Tucker was saying and challenging the narrative, which we should all be doing, having this conversation. So let's, we do this in an attitude of respect and just let's keep talking about this, present different sides, the beauty of Americana, right? As long as everyone's sincerely looking for the truth, we will find it. Wow, that was big. So, moving on, Michael, you brought this to my attention, made sure I was going to bring this up today on the show. What is going on with Tulsi's famous press conference and apparently there's religious groups that were tied in. What do you got for us?
So this is very interesting. This came out a couple of days ago, July 23rd, so about 7 days ago, a week ago. Tulsi Gabbard held a press conference, and she said that new evidence uncovers Obama-directed creation of false intelligence reports used to launch years-long coup to undermine President Trump and the American people. Now, a lot of the information that came out of this particular press conference is not new to many people who've been paying attention. You know, we knew that Obama was conducting this operation and that the whole Russiagate thing was a complete and total hoax. We know the Steele dossier was absolutely fabricated and paid for by the Clinton campaign. But there were other pieces of information that were very interesting, especially to me, as I was looking through this piece. I want to read to you just a portion of what Tulsi Gabbard put out in this particular press release. She said, below are key findings from the HPSCI, and that stands for, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Okay. So this came out of their report. Putin's principal interests in the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not showing any preference of a certain candidate. Another point, Putin chose not to leak the most damaging and compromising material on Hillary Clinton to the election. So in other words, Putin withheld certain key pieces of information that would have been damaging to Hillary Clinton's campaign. And the reason is that Putin actually expected Hillary Clinton to win the election. So he was trying to make sure that he had a reserve pin to fire after she won. Going on, it says, instead of planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed would be an inevitable Clinton presidency. If Russia wanted to help Donald Trump get elected, they would have released this material prior to the election to harm the Clinton campaign. Now, here's some of the material that Putin held back. The press release says this: the material about Hillary Clinton that Putin chose not to release before the election included possible criminal acts, including, and this is the key piece, details of secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department representatives offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton, significant increases in financing from department funds and the patronage of state in dealing with post-Soviet countries. Okay. As you know, like to look at the numbers. I like to look at the figures, particularly with regard to Catholic charitable organizations. So I went to, usaspending.gov, and that's where you can get all kinds of metrics with regard to how the government is spending their grants and who they're giving grants to and that sort of thing. And I want to throw this particular slide up because what I found at usaspending.gov showed a rather interesting jump in financial contributions. This is a chart over time, and you can see right in the middle where the first red arrow is for the USCCB and for Catholic Relief Services, there is a significant spike in funding in 2016. Now, this is significant because 2016 was the election cycle. Obama was still in office. So for there to be a significant jump in funding to both the USCCB and to Catholic Relief Services in 2016 shows that what Tulsi Gabbard released in that particular press conference is likely true. Now, that funding came down once Trump was elected, and you can see the subsequent 4 bars are pretty even keel. They don't really go up or down too dramatically. And then once Biden takes office, there's another jump, another spike in giving. And of course, that it gets radically higher towards the end of Biden's administration, begging the question, was there a similar promise that came for the re-election campaign? I can't prove it. I don't have that information, and Tulsi Gabbard didn't go into it in her press conference. But what I think that we see here is that there is a collaboration between the Obama administration and then subsequently the Biden administration and various Catholic charitable organizations. By the way, I did look into Catholic Charities and I saw a similar jump in 2016 as well as in 2021. So it's not proof, but it is strong evidence. And I think that this is the kind of evidence that Tulsi Gabbard needs to have on hand when she prepares her further reports and investigations on this particular topic.
That's huge. It's backing up the press conference. So you went to the stats of so this is money from the U.S. State Department, essentially, right?
Yes.
That suddenly jumped in an election year in 2016 to these religious organizations. And again, it's a little bit hard to track where they go and how their money is used because of the 501c3 church status of this, which is we talk about this difficulty all the time with tracking donations and grants and all that stuff from the U.S. government. But it does, from what we can see from the outside, that it does correspond to what she's saying. And I think that's huge. I mean, you put that together with John Podesta, Clinton's campaign manager, right? And the emails that were leaked about his anti-Catholic stances and how he understood how liberal he was. So it's
call for a Catholic spring.
Absolutely. So this sinks, and this also hits home, especially for us here at Catholics for Catholics. I mean, our good friend, senior advisor to the organization, General Michael Flynn. Okay. This has been all this news with Tulsi, what she's come out with this press conference has been vindication for what's happened with him and his family. You will recall that General Flynn was really at the epicenter of this whole, he was the first one that they went after even prior to Trump, and Trump won. Okay. It was December 5th of 2016, or December 8th of 2016, that the Obama, this is after Trump had just won a month before, that Obama gathered those top members of his cabinet, James Clapper, Comey, in the White House, in the Oval Office, and they specifically decided on that day to withhold the presidential briefings to incoming President Trump, which has never been done before. And then a month later, basically they were working behind the scenes already to subvert this administration. And then on January 5th, of course, those famous words were Obama told Donald Trump, hey, don't bring General Flynn into your administration. How crazy is that? Of all the things he could have said as far as advice to President Trump, one president to another says, stay away from Flynn. Well, now we know why. Flynn knew where all the bodies were. Okay. So this has all been, and then afterwards, Flynn's family was completely destroyed, targeted, but he held on to his faith, and he is where he is today as one of the leaders of the grassroots movement. Right. So this all comes full circle, and there's a reason that people like Flynn and also even Trump is saying to a certain degree, people like Obama should be held accountable for treason. This was treasonous actions done by him and his team.
It completely was. Especially, I mean, the thing is, if you are a president of the United States, your intention is to be supportive of the mission, the purpose, and the existence of the United States, not to dig at the incoming administration, because ostensibly we're all supposed to be on the same team, right? Well, when you start to look into Obama's background and you see that he was raised by communists, and we're talking active communists, and that he was involved in the New Party and the formation of several other active communist organizations. He worked for the Gamaliel Foundation, which is one of the largest Catholic Campaign for Human Development funded entities in the country. It also happens to be something that was the brainchild of Saul Alinsky, who himself was a Marxist. You start to put the pieces together. Obama had a lot of connections with a lot of different nefarious entities. And so his rise, his influence in the presidency, and then also what he has done to subvert both Donald Trump and to kind of take over when Biden was non compos mentis during his administration, shows that the man is extremely dangerous. And I think that he is a clear and present danger to the United States. And yes, he absolutely needs to be prosecuted.
Him and his whole, the team around him, Susan Rice, James Clapper, Comey, all the rest, right? That's
all of them.
It's
All of them.
out of people are saying this. I'm not the first to say this, but out of one of the most important things that Trump can do in this time round, it's yes, the tariffs are incredible. What he's doing on a national or international stage, those are huge. But it's the restoration of accountability in this
Mhm.
country, because we cannot survive as a republic if we don't hold what happened this past 8 years, those people responsible, because no one's going to trust the system. Okay. And if we
Right.
happen to lose in 3.5 years from now, you better darn believe it that they're going to come back with a vengeance
Yep.
against any of us who've been trying to speak up. So it is crucial. These guys need prayers. And, we're coming to the end of our show. I don't know if you have any final comments about that point, Michael, before. So just to remind you people, this is a spiritual war. What the people that we elected, us, the Catholic people, we, the Catholic people, 58 to 40% at landslide last November, those people in this administration, not only Donald Trump, but all around them, they have some of the most difficult decisions elected officials have ever had to make in this country as they sort to the bottom of this absolute mess. Let me prove my point. Let's show the Dan Bongino, who's deputy director of the FBI. Let's show this clip of what he posted on social media last week.
We'll get you right back to that House hearing on the One Big Beautiful bill coming up in just a second. But I do want to take you out to a story that we brought you a bit earlier, as we do have this post coming in, some calling it cryptic, from the Deputy Director for the FBI, Dan Bongino. I do want to read it to you in full. This is just a portion of it here. He says, during my tenure here as the Deputy Director of the FBI, I have repeatedly relayed to you that things are happening that might not be immediately visible, but they are happening. The director and I are committed to stamping out public corruption and the political weaponization of both law enforcement and intelligence operations. It's a priority for us, but what I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. We are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations by the book and in accordance with the law. We are going to get the answers we all deserve. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land, but I can promise you an honest and dignified effort at truth, not my truth or your truth, but the truth. God bless America and all those who defend her. Respectfully, Dan. Again, Dan Bongino posting
Holy
that,
mackerel.
but not
Okay, let's get some comments on that. Michael Hichborn, what talk?
To be honest, I really don't know where to go with this, because the thing that stood out to me the most was he said that what I have learned in the course of our properly predicted and necessary investigations into the aforementioned matters has shocked me down to my core. Dan Bongino's been exposing things for years. And it's not like the things that he's talking about or the things that we know about that are going on in politics are surprising. We were pretty well informed. I think that through his show, he talked about a lot of this stuff. But for him to come out and say that through these investigations, he's been shocked to his core is very surprising to me. Because what it says is that the things that he talked about on the show and the things that we as members of the United States of America and good conservative, faithful Catholic conservatives who pay attention to politics, we understand a lot of what's happening. But for him to be shocked, I mean, really shocked, not only surprises me, but it fills me with a little bit of anxiety, because I'm deeply concerned about what was so shocking that he has been shocked down to his core to say, we cannot run a republic like this. What does that mean? I have no idea what he's talking about, but I can guess. And if I were to guess, I think he has an understanding that we have some sort of oligarchy that's pulling the strings from behind and rigging things and fixing the way that politics is run in this country. If that's the case, well, that's not so shocking, but it is it's a bit of confirmation of what I already knew. I don't know if he would be shocked by that, but that's yeah.
But yeah, and let's throw another angle at this. What was it over on last Thursday? We had Stephen Miller update the numbers of missing kids lost under the Obama administration. Was like what 320,000 that they estimated, was now 450,000 kids are missing. Unaccompanied migrants or children in this country are lost. Don't know where they're at. Okay. With the amount of those kids that are lost and how they open the border, I mean, it's so obvious. Like anyone with a brain knows that was an intentional operation to open up the borders by the Biden administration. So people knew why. Why were they doing? Yes, they had several reasons to flood the voting sections, the zones, and overwhelm the system. Of course, that's obvious. So the Democrats would have more people to vote, but you can't not think about, was there this perversion among these kids to use them as sex slaves, okay, by people in public administration? That, watching what Dan posted, that's probably what I would say if I knew that members of our own government were taking these kids for specifically sexual abuse, okay? I don't know. I mean, time will tell. That's why we've got to get to the bottom of this. That's why we've got to get to the bottom of why what members of Catholic Charity knew what, where, when, and how. Because you cannot tell me, I always say it, 95% of Catholic Charity people are probably amazing people, but there are some people that had to have known what was going on. Okay, I had a conversation this past few days with a member of a very well-placed member of the diocesan curia. He's not I'm not going to say if he's a cleric or not, but who understood exactly what I was talking about. He applauded our efforts for what we are doing here at Catholics for Catholics for speaking up, because he can't really say what he would like to say publicly for different reasons. So he applauded you. You are supporting us for standing strong and bringing accountability to this for those kids, because they're missing. They need our help, okay? And we got to support people like Dan Bongino, who also, could you see that picked it up at the end, Michael, how he kind of like cryptically said, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to give the material over to the next phase. I hope it sees the light of day. Do you see that part?
Right. Yeah. You know, I want to put something into perspective real quick, because sometimes numbers, especially when we're talking about numbers of people, there's no context. 400,000, 300,000, it's a number on a ledger sheet for a lot of people. I live in Spotsylvania County, Virginia. Okay. It's a pretty populous county. It's pretty population dense. There are some rural parts, but by and large, if you're driving down Route 3 or if you're driving up Route 1, you're going to hit some traffic, especially around rush hour. Okay. And it gets tight and slow. The population of Spotsylvania County is 149,000 people. I grew up in Stafford County, which is just north of Spotsylvania, and it's really grown since I was a kid, and it's much more population dense than Spotsylvania. Its population is 160,000. And the population of Fredericksburg, Virginia, which is a small city in the middle of Virginia, has a population of about 30,000. You put those numbers together and you still haven't added up to the number of children that are reported missing. That's 2 counties in a city, in a state, a very population-rich state. That's the state of Virginia. If you were to have all of those people suddenly disappear overnight, I think that you would have every single agency in the United States looking for all those people that have disappeared. Where'd they go? How come we can't find them? And when we're talking about children, our most precious and the most vulnerable among us, the fact that we can't find children, and how hard are we looking anyway? But this number reaches the population of several counties in a population rich state. That's not only horrifying, but it's absolutely and totally unacceptable.
Completely is. Hence the need to throw another dimension to this, while we as an organization and a lot of others have got to keep pushing for the release of, call it whatever you want, the list,
Yep.
the Epstein material. Okay.
Right.
It's an absolute must. Okay. He had to have these kids who are too afraid to speak up, who were ravaged by this group of whatever elites, okay, around the world, need justice, okay?
Yep.
That needs to see the light of day, whether that's a list, whether that's whatever. We have to know who they are, because if we can't protect our kids, what the heck, who are we as a country, right?
Right.
So
Right.
we keep pushing for that, on your own social media accounts. We release the material list, whatever you want to call it. We have to. We got to be praying for this country and our elected leaders. Final comments, Michael, before we close off the show.
I was just say that we need to be praying for our country. We need to be praying for those children, and please God, with the proper focus and the proper work from people like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and the others that are in key positions, to know these are people we need to pray for, because they need the grace of office to do what God ordained and didn't ordain, but what God has designed for them to do. They need to do it. And they can't do it without grace. So yeah, absolutely. We've got to be praying for them, pray for our country, pray for those children.
On the note of prayer, you can, this is a reason for this 250th anniversary celebration year. We have reinstituted the Catholic Patriotic Rosary every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a different Catholic priest who leads. So if you know a Catholic priest who would like to lead just a rosary, nothing majorly political, we need them. We'd love to send them our way. We'd love to have them pray and lead us in prayer, because it is a battle of prayer. And also speaking up, because look how the narrative changed. Even with President Trump, as powerful as President Trump is, he was pushed to move on the Epstein stuff after he saw the uproar from We the People. That's democracy 101. So
Right.
whether you post on your own social media accounts, share what we're doing. People like our Lepanto, post it. Get this, share this podcast with other people, because they do hear us. They really do. And that does have an effect. We got to keep doing that. Okay. We also have just another announcement. We have our Catholic Patriotic Minute released once a week. That is a different Catholic hero. This show's called Catholic Champion. We want to champion people like Jason Jones, who are on the front lines, advocating for Catholic values at Vulnerable People Project. And also looking back the last 250 years, we do 1-minute recap videos of some of our heroes. We need to be inspired, people, and pray if they're in heaven as a declared canonized saint. Last but not least, we are doing Champion Priests for America, a retreat for priests, not just a normal retreat. It is a retreat in Champion, Wisconsin, where our Blessed Mother appeared, the best place possible for a priest to come and get recharged. Thank you all for joining us. It's good to be back. We had a little bit of summer hiatus, kind of recharging the spiritual engines a bit. It's good to be back with Michael. Great seeing you again, and looking forward to next week. Same time, same place. We will see you. God bless, and fight on.